a practice, a spiritual practice, a faith practice that has saved you over the last year or so as we have been in this time? What is something that has been very important to you? Everybody. Jenny, I'm assuming we're still going through a few more to get assigned.
Yeah, so she was working on it. She kind of had to do one at a time, and so she was going pretty quick. It was going pretty quick, but we may have another couple people pop in. So,
okay. All right. Okay. Well, I wrote into the chat inviting you to name a spiritual practice or a faith practice that you use, especially maybe something that you've used over the past year in your own journey. I usually have a cat or two that join me on these meetings, so they're in charge in this house, so forgive them.
That's one of the fun things, is to meet everybody's pets.
I know, right? Time with nature has been important to me, I know. When you spend the day looking at a Zoom screen, it's important to connect with the natural world, I think.
I can't figure out how to put the chat up.
On the bottom of your screen, do you see the little chat bubble?
Yes, I went into chat, and I wrote something.
You just put you have to hit enter after you type.
I wonder how I do enter. There's no place for enter.
No, on your keyboard. Or are you on a different kind of device?
No, sorry. I'm on an iMac.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
No problem.
I love that praying in color. That Sybil.
Sybil. Oh my gosh! I almost. I don't know, Jenny. You made me. It made me. I lost it. I don't remember. But it's in my toolkit, so I'll look.
Macbeth. Macbeth, I think is her last name.
Once you almost said shepherd, I was like, nope, that's all I'm going to remember. Okay, looks like I'm getting a weird sun thing here now.
Well, you're at least getting the sun.
Yeah.
Are you still in California?
Yeah, so hey everybody, I'll go ahead and just get started, and then if there's a few others that join us, they can catch up. But let me make sure that you all can see me, and I'll get rid of some of the sun here. But I am Stephanie Fritz, and I'm the mission coordinator for the Office of Christian Formation in the Presbyterian Mission Agency. If you're care to know about the PCUSA structures and layers, the Presbyterian Mission Agency is one of the agencies. Gregory and Alana would join you from the Office of General Assembly. And so I join you from the Presbyterian Mission Agency Office of Christian Formation. We have been remote since the middle of March. And for some, that means their homes in Louisville, Kentucky. For myself and my husband, we live in our RV and have done so since before I had the job in Louisville. And so I come to you today from Southern California, where we're spending a few months in Desert Hot Springs. So I Zoom from all over the country, and I mentioned that you might see my cats because clearly there's not that much room and places for them to go. But I am delighted to be with you. It's wonderful to be able to visit the different presbyteries in this way, rather than flying in for a few hours and flying back out. So I think that has been one positive of this time, is to be able to have contact with lots more folks. So I am a Christian educator, and prior to coming to Louisville, I served at Central Presbyterian Church in downtown Denver, and prior to that, a few other churches. I'm a Colorado native. So thank you for having this event. And today we're going to talk about our Faith Practices Toolkit that our office has produced. This is something that I will show you how to download, and it is free to anybody, of course. But we're also going to talk about what these practices are, why we use practices, and how we came up with the practices that we're going to talk about today. So we're really going to focus on what it means to do these Sabbath practices in community. Presbyterians are so connected with their faith and their community, and it's hard to really take the two apart. And so we're really going to talk about what it means to have some communal practices. So as we were waiting, I invited you in the chat to share some practices that might have enhanced your life, especially over the last year. You're still invited to do that. Are there a couple of volunteers that we will not go around and do introductions of everybody, but when you do speak, just say what your name is and maybe what your role is. And I would love feedback, and there'll be time in this workshop to talk and ask questions and whatnot. So it won't be an hour of a lecture, but as we work through, whenever you decide to speak, if you could please just introduce yourself and your maybe your role at your church. So is there anybody that would like to share about a faith practice that is particularly meaningful for them? I think everybody can. Richard.
I'm Dick Mickley. I'm CRE at Marysville First, pastor assistant for education and visitation. And in the education department, I think particularly the adult Sunday school classes, at least the one I teach, is
Oh, you muted.
Oh, here we go. Something. Yeah. You can try to unmute yourself, I think. There you go.
I'm sorry. I thought I had.
No.
I'm Dick Mickley. I'm the pastor assistant for education and visitation at Marysville First. Particularly in the Sunday school class I teach, it's basically being able to speak your faith. And I have seen development in that throughout the year.
And we'll talk about the practice of storytelling today.
That's the name of my class.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Dick. Who else? Anybody else like to share about a practice? Katie.
Hi, centering prayer is something that I notice when I stop doing it in how I am in the world. And there are lots of ways you can do contemplative prayer, but for me, it means every day there's some time when I disconnect from this brain that won't stop, and a kind of sometimes a frenzy in here with the sea of anxiety that we're in, and I'm just still and I just listen and kind of breathe and remember who I am and whose I am, and that we're all connected in love, and that everything is actually already all right. So that's really key for me being sane and able to love in the world.
Awesome. Practice prayer. One other. Anybody else like prayer?
My name is Juliana Boame Champon. I attend Ramsey Presbyterian Church under Silver Valley. I'm a deacon, and the way I practice my faith is I have a broadcast list that I send devotional prayers to friends all over the world. I have so many different pastor friends from Ghana and all over. Of course, I'm from Ghana. And that's the way I share my faith. And I, as much as possible, post prayer requests and things on my Facebook, anything to encourage people. That's what.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's a practice of prayer, of course, and storytelling, and also service. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, Ellen, go ahead.
Okay. Praying in color. You know, I didn't even know about the book when I was in Israel. I went with Trinity Seminary, and I started doing pictures at different points and with prayer. And then I found the book, and I really have found that a wonderful way to express it. I also have been doing Zentangles, and Zentangles kind of, you know, it's just almost a doodling thing, and it works very well with praying in color.
Awesome. Love those Zentangles. All right, for this morning's workshop, I just want to give you an idea of what the outline will be. We'll talk about practices, the what, the why, the 5 practices that our office is focusing on. Storytelling, prayer, and service are 3 of them. There are 2 others that we have focused on. And then we'll talk about how to apply those with the season of Lent and ideas you may have for Lent. I recognize that many of you may have a Lent completely planned, and others of you might be coming looking for some ideas. So we'll talk about both ways. We'll make sure to share the resource with you and how to find it, and then we'll have some time for question and answer. So I'll do some time of screen sharing, which Jenny, if anybody has a question during screen sharing, it is hard for me to see the chat at that point, but you all are welcome to use the chat to talk to one another. And if there's something that needs to come to my attention, I think maybe Jenny can help me see that. But we will take a break in the middle of the presentation and after we talk about the 5 practices and then before Lent. So let me fumble with my screen share real quick. All right, can I get a thumbs up if that is, you can all see that well? Great, okay. So we entitled this workshop Sabbath Practices. In coming out of our office, everybody puts it a different way in their event, but we talk about it from the perspective of Sabbath, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So what are Sabbath practices? So the doctrine of Sabbath is central to our understanding of who we are as children of God. And it calls us away from our earthly rhythms where we are trapped in cycles of busyness and production, and invites us to embrace holy rhythms. So this looks a lot of different ways. We are called to set apart a full day for Sabbath in our scriptures. And many of us, especially if we work in the church, find that maybe a bit challenging. Sabbath can be a moment, Sabbath can be an hour, Sabbath can be a day, Sabbath can be a long period of time. If you ever were to get the opportunity to visit the Taizé community, you can learn what it might look like to be in Sabbath for an extended amount of time. But no matter what, this is a time where we stop doing all the stuff and we take on an intentionality to explore our relationship with God. So today we're going to particularly explore what does it mean to be in Sabbath as a community. When we frame our times of communal gathering as Sabbath, it helps us understand the importance of stopping so that we might dwell with God and with one another. And so you can refer to your community of faith, your household, a particular group of people you may gather with as a Sabbath community that you participate in. It's important to think of that time when you gather together as a community as a time that you will step away and not necessarily not acknowledge what's going on in the world, but that you will dwell with God and each other as we seek to engage with the world. I think so often we might think of Sabbath as a way to get away from it all. And while we may need to take that rest, what we're really doing is making a switch. What does it mean to be a Sabbath community together? What does it mean to look at the world and engage with the world and one another as we are children of God? So that's really where we're going to focus our time today, is what these communal practices might be. So the Office of Christian Formation, even a year or so before I came on board, gathered 30 practitioners from around the country. They were pastors, they were professors, they were educators, elders, and really talked about practices. And then they talked about what are the practices that we do in community? What are the communal practices? So there are clearly dozens and dozens of practices, and you all talked about some of those in the chat and the ways that you engage in your own personal spiritual life. But what we're going to look at today is these 5 practices, and they're not the only practices, of course, but 5 practices that we would encourage you to explore as practices that weave through our faith communities, that encourage the whole body to engage with one another. We're particularly interested in intergenerational faith formation, that if we are not all together participating with the family of God, then something's missing. So these practices of hospitality, prayer, service, storytelling, and retreat. We gather together, anytime we gather as a community of faith, these practices emerge. You're already doing them in some form, at least a few of them. I hope we're all praying. I hope that we're all telling our stories. I hope that we're showing God's radical hospitality. We might not always participate in retreat as much as we should. And I hope that we're all engaging in our world in service. That is what the Matthew 25 initiative calls us to do. So these are things that are happening, but what does it mean to be more intentional about it? Language matters. How do we talk to our faith communities about these practices? And how do we make sure that the very, very, very youngest of us are participating alongside all of our church family? So we're going to talk about being intentional about this and using the language of these are Sabbath practices. It is a holy moment when we show hospitality to one another. That is part of our faith life. It's not just a task to do to make sure everything is ready. It is a holy moment to stop and listen to somebody tell their story. And their story can be what happened at school that day, something that they do in a morning routine, a toddler having bath time. What does mom or dad always do in a bath time? And it can be a faith journey that someone that has had a faith story that is long that tells us about that. So all of these pieces are valuable. So I'm going to go through each of these practices. So hospitality. When we participate in the practice of hospitality, we're affirming the worth of God's people. We're especially putting the stories of Jesus into action. I love thinking about Jesus as someone that shows us radical hospitality. that in fact, Jesus didn't invite us to his home. He didn't have a table to set of his own, a home to prepare, but he showed radical hospitality by showing up in others' homes, by showing up in other spaces and being vulnerable, being authentic, and being open to listening. So that kind of radical hospitality is different than making sure that we have our best table setting out and making sure everything is just right. The hospitality that God is talking about is how we're being authentic and vulnerable. We allow all God's people to share their gifts, and we remember that we were once strangers and we will be strangers again. So when we participate in hospitality as a community and we invite all people to share their gifts, this is truly a Sabbath practice. Prayer. We hope that we're all praying, but who's praying in our faith communities? Who's allowed to pray? Who leads a prayer? Sometimes we get caught up in a cycle that only certain people can lead those prayers, that we pray in a certain way. When we pray as a community, we have ways that we like to do that. We have ways in our liturgy. And those are important because they're a ritual and a tradition of our community. It's important that the whole family of God knows those rituals and participates in those ways of praying. But it's also a time that we recommend, that we say, how do we pray? All the different ways that we can pray. Who can bring those gifts to us? We should always be exploring new ways of prayer in community, always be exploring how do we invite everybody to prayer, and recognizing that there is no one way to pray. So the practice of prayer in community is an opportunity of reconciliation with God and with one another, so we may go into the world to bear witness of God's reconciling love. The practice of service. So in our Sabbath communities, we engage in activities that are apart from our everyday activities. And this can start within a faith community. Now, in today's world, there are many, many, many opportunities to serve, and the church does not have the corner on service. In fact, we are encouraged, especially through Matthew 25, to partner with organizations that are working in the community. But it's important to interpret that the act of service, the Sabbath faith practice of service, we do that coming from a different place. We do that coming from a particular place as people of faith, as followers of Christ. And it's a really important thing to practice in our faith community and to recognize it not just as we need to help the people. You know, we can often use othering language when we do service. Help those poor people. But no, we engage in service together. And there are ways to engage in service with each other and with the outside world. It is, in fact, our greatest commandment, and it's a response to God's grace. Storytelling. I think that many times we've lost the practice of storytelling and the richness that it can provide. Sometimes we're nervous that what it really means is an altar call or testimony, and that we put it in this little tiny box. But storytelling is about sharing about ourselves and with others, what it means to be people of God and how it is essential to our identity in Christ. We're encouraging one another in our faith journeys and creating space for vulnerability and authenticity. When we practice storytelling on a regular basis, when it's not just, and I don't mean this but when it's not just one course that we have, one class, one group of people, when it's infused into everything that we do, what happens is people start to notice that this is a place of authenticity. This is a place where I can truly tell my story. That church is not a place for perfect people to come, right? And that we all have messy, messy, messy stories. And what we know about the emerging generations, our younger generations, is that authenticity and vulnerability is extremely important. That they have a lot of opportunities where they can, get a sermon or a motivational talk or some sort of information, but what they really need is a community that's authentic and vulnerable. And this is what storytelling creates. Through storytelling, we establish ourselves within the long history of God's Sabbath community. We know that we have a place in that community. When we invite 2-year-olds to storytell, when we invite 92-year-olds to storytell, we all have a place in that history. And we slow down and intentionally participate in recalling our own story and listening to others. And this is what Jesus did, right? So we imitate Jesus when we do this, and we're intentional about it. Retreat. So we often think about how to, Sabbath retreat. Isn't that kind of the same thing? Lots of our practices come forth in the matter of retreat, but we want to hold up the practice of retreat because it is when we intentionally set that time apart to connect with God and remember who we were created to be. But it's an incredibly important thing to retreat as community, to encourage households to retreat with one another, to encourage the church family to retreat together, because this is how we tend to relationships. And during this time of pandemic, this has been incredibly important. And this is an example of retreat can happen in an hour. It can happen when a household takes the time to take a walk around the block with one another and engage with one another. And when we're able to be together in person again, it's a powerful thing to be with one another physically, perhaps in nature, in the outdoors, and retreat with one another. But whatever that retreat might look like, we're reminded that Jesus modeled rest and reflection in order to live a life of service. Okay, I'm going to stop share there. So those are the 5 practices that we talk about engaging in a faith community. Now, I do have a resource and a toolkit that can explore those in great depth, can give you many resources, many ideas of how to use these particular practices, and you'll all have access to that. But in this time, for a few minutes before we move on to Lent, I'm wondering if you would like to share which practice you believe that your faith community does participate in, or what your reflections are on some of these practices. Anybody like to share? And remember to introduce yourself if you do.
Dick, did you want to share?
I'm going into the storytelling part. It comes to me as you're going through this, is part of why we're hesitant to, I'll use the word evangelize. We don't know how to deal with somebody that comes in and wants to debate because they think they know what they're talking about. If you approach them with a story rather than a debate, you put them at a disadvantage in some respects because it's your story you're telling. You're not trying to convince them that they're wrong or that God is right.
Thank you. Yeah, what does it look like to invite people into our faith communities because we are a community of storytellers, because we are a community where your story matters, because God will take care of the rest if we're faithful about sharing our stories. Any other thoughts? David.
I liked what I heard, your link with hospitality and storytelling in a way. And I think we don't do a lot of it, but even in Bible studies and other sharing times, just doing joys and concerns gives people the opportunity to share where they are and how this current week is affecting them. And so there's that both storytelling and the hospitality, which was listening and taking seriously whatever's going on in their life.
Yeah, David, and what does it look like if you take something like that you routinely do and you name it?
Yeah, no, I think it can be helpful. Yes, yeah.
We'll now show the practice of hospitality and storytelling as we listen to one another. Robert, I assume, is Robert and Paige.
Pardon me. Robert, pastor, local congregation. Many of those things touch for me, but I know that in the past, my wife, Paige, is a DCE as well. We've done retreats. And those have been very, very powerful ways to pull away, to get away from the pullness, the strangeness of the world, and to get together and to share, whether that be for one afternoon, which you've done, or even a whole weekend. It's a powerful way. But one thing I've realized more and more from my congregation I serve, even for me, is over the past year, as people have been away from one another, I've heard from our church members continually, the one thing we really miss is that time face to face, where we gather in the same room. And it's really become even more apparent to me is the hospitality is not just sharing a cup of coffee. Hospitality is where we are sharing our stories. We are talking about the events that are important and intentionally setting those times for hospitality and making it a part of the church ministry. Yeah, of course, worship's important, obviously, but the hospitality is where so much of that faith, so much of that faith story gets shared, and it is crucial. It is absolutely crucial. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just add that when we are encouraging stories with one another, as we show that hospitality, and we share with one another our stories, sometimes people think it needs to be their faith story, right? And so somehow they've got to make the connection. But I think that if we tell our stories, we can then explore together where they saw God in that.
And if I can piggyback on that a little bit, I think I work primarily with children and some youth. And so I think when we allow the younger ones to tell their story or tell any story, they're so excited, they're so full of energy, and and you're making that being hospitable because you're saying, yes, you're important and I want to hear what you have to say. And makes them feel so welcome and a part of the church family, I think.
And the importance of gathering in our sort of age and stages. We talk a lot about intergenerational ministry and the whole community, but the importance of gathering the children together or gathering the youth together, and we do have a toolkit piece for each of these, is the children practice what it means to be storytellers, understand, they practice that together, but then they go into the time when they're with the whole faith community and they realize, oh, we're all doing this. This is not just something that we did, we're all doing this. And oh, I'm going to do it at home too. Thank you, Katie, for what you put in the chat. The radical shift in power is super important. And I think that's what Jesus is calling us to. And that, yes, children are often the teachers. So, Robert, you look like you're trying to say something.
I'll jump. This is Bob Gustafson. I'm pastor at West Berlin Presbyterian and temporary treasurer of the Presbytery. I would just say, I think for us, in some ways, Zoom has been a blessing in sharing in community, in that about the half hour that we have people on before we officially start our service has been a wonderful time to maintain community through this period when people can't physically get together. But it's been amazing because, yes, I may have a conversation with somebody, but then everybody else overhears that, which you don't necessarily get before or after church in a physical setting. So in some ways, we're sharing more broadly by doing it electronically than we were before.
Yeah, and how can you hang on to that practice, right? What are the things that we've learned about practices in this pandemic time that we want to hold on to? And I think we've seen a lot of practices emerge. Okay, I'm going to go back to my screen share and we'll come back to a time of conversation. So let's just spend some time about practices in the season of Lent. I will tell you that the toolkit does have all the seasons in it, so you can look at different things, but since we have Lent coming up, we'll focus on that. So Lent is a great time to explore practices with your congregation, with your ministries, your children's ministry, your youth ministry, because we already know that we usually intentionally refocus during Lent, that we usually think of that as a time set aside to explore our spiritual disciplines. So how might we do that in the season of Lent? So if you're thinking big picture and you haven't sort of looked at this at all, and maybe you're looking for next year, here's some sort of big ways that you can think about doing practices in Lent. Lent is a great time to dive into each of the practices. There's 5 of them, plus there's Sabbath, so that kind of works out well, the introduction of Sabbath to your community and each of them. You could do this as a full church thematic approach where you might have some home groups, you would have a sermon series, you would have times where folks are in their age and stage time, fellowship, each of those things. So there's a way to really introduce these practices to your community in that way. Again, these are things that we're doing, and they'll say, well, of course we pray. Well, let's explore that. And what does it mean to really look at hospitality as a practice and change our language? So you can simply look at what you're going to send at home, especially in this time where I'm just assuming that many of us aren't meeting in person. Some of us are, but we might be socially distanced and that sort of thing. So what's emerged during this time is that home faith formation, whether that home is a single or couple, a family, a integrated family, blended family, whatever a household looks like, that our home practices are very important. How do we show, this is a good time to show our households that it matters how they engage in practices in their home. And then it's an opportunity to come back together at some point and do those practices with one another. And then, number 3, of course, we kind of talked about, but building a sermon series alone or an education series, and coming at it from the perspective of what does Jesus say to us about these practices. And in our toolkit, there is a Bible study for each of the practices with several scripture references. So here's just some more specific ways. I need to move you all over so I can see this. So of course and we've already kind of talked about this, our practices aren't standalone, right? So I've kind of done a few slides of the way that some of them may overlap. So hospitality, storytelling, and prayer during Lent. Making a commitment to hospitality as a practice during Lent. We sort of got thrown into this pandemic. You are all saints for doing what you have done, but you did stuff to survive. Now, maybe during Lent, when we're still doing this, we can look at those online practices that we have, making a commitment to that. Who are your hospitality people if you're gathering on Zoom? How do you make sure that everybody is welcomed? And really talk about, if we're not together in person, what does hospitality look like? Because we will always have folks not joining us. 2024, if we're all sitting in our sanctuary, there will still be homebound. There will still be college students that are away. So how do we do that? Introduce new small online groups committed to connecting to one another, infuse storytelling and prayer into these groups. So if you utilize small groups or you haven't before, Zoom groups are a great way to start that. And that's when you can practice that storytelling, and that's when you can practice different ways of praying. So storytelling. I've seen a lot of recorded videos. What's been amazing is that it's a little bit easier way to reach into especially busy family homes, is that, you know, whether it be at 7:30 in the morning or right before bedtime at 9:30, they can record these videos on their own time and somebody can put them together. But think about what a particular prompt might be, and then a way to come back together and share. This again just shows that you're a community of storytellers, and it's important to hear everybody's story. Even if that story is 2 or 3 sentences long, especially with young children, that's a great way to start. Retreat and service. Encourage households to participate in technology-free retreats. This is a great idea for Lent, I think. We need to step away from these screens, and how can we equip them to spend this time together or with God? How can we make sure that we connect our single households as well? And then having service opportunities that maybe they can do during Lent, that they can do during this technology-free retreat, perhaps, even if it's going around the neighborhood picking up trash. And again, using the language of this is a faith practice as we're doing it, making sure that we're intentionally saying we're participating in a Sabbath practice together by walking around the neighborhood and picking up trash. So prayer, retreat, and storytelling. Develop small prayer retreats for households, allow them to hold these in their own time throughout the season, come together to share about the experience, and make sure to make them intergenerational. Make sure that everybody can participate. So those are a few ideas for your Lenten season. Thoughts and questions, ideas for infusing practices into Lent. Questions as well.
One of the things that I did, I have a Club 56 group, which is 5th and 6th graders, and we did a night of service together, because it is harder to think of things you can do service-wise in your own home or separately. So we have a brown bag ministry for people experiencing homelessness. We made, everybody at home made 1 or 2 brown bag lunches together. And then it was around Thanksgiving. So then we made Thanksgiving cards together. And the last thing we did is we have a blanket ministry here at our church. And so you take those fleecy blankets and you cut them, do those tie blankets. And we did that together and tied blankets. And so it was a lot of fellowship and conversation time, but we still felt like we were doing things together, even though it was separate. You just have to be
Jenny, and taking something like that and then intentionally applying the language of the practices that you're participating in together. Just, you know, really repeating how this is a holy moment with God. I think children especially are sort of trained to think, when I go into that sanctuary place, or maybe this weird Zoom place, that's when I'm supposed to be doing the God thing. I might have, you know, they're sort of compartmentalizing things, and practices are a way to thread it all together, especially with children, but I think everybody, because we can compartmentalize in our mind that this is, I don't volunteer with the church to do the food bank, that's with my Rotary Club. Well, you know, you're participating as a person of faith in this act of service, and that is your practice. Others. Do you all pretty much have a Lenten season planned out? Yeah. Well, let me go ahead and show you the resource that you'll be able to download. Sometimes it's hard, all the time it's hard to find things on the Presbyterian Mission website. Raise your hand if you even know that there's a presbyterianmission.org website. Because sometimes people are like, I only know about the PCUSA.org, and I'm like, you're not going to find this stuff there. So let me just show you where that is. First, let me, this is the short link, though it's the, so you want to write that, that's kind of like the short way. So even though it's a Presbyterian Mission Toolkit, we have these short links that we can give people. So if you go to peaceusa.org/formation, let me.
Please share your screen so we can see
Yes,
it.
I will do that. I just have to make sure that I'm sharing something that you actually want to see. Okay. All right. So when you go to, I need to move you all around. Okay. So there's the long link of what it is at the top there, but this is our homepage. This is the Office of Christian homepage. So you can get to that by peaceusa.org/formation. And you'll see links and whatnot to all of the things. But I think it's easier to just start from here. This is where the Faith Practices Toolkit. Before I click on that, I'll just show you that we've also got quick sheets here. We've got remote faith for the long haul, a quick sheet about that. Also talking about what it looks like as we slowly start to come back together. Conversations that you can have. This is a resource that helps you talk about together how you're going to come back together. And then we have lots of other quick sheets and things like that that you can click on if you go here on this side of the site. There's some age and stage, the quick sheets for youth ministry. Anyway, this is how you get to the Faith Practices Toolkit. Click on that. And so it is a variety of different PDFs. So there'll be an introduction where you can kind of just get the overview of everything that's in there. Then we have essentially a Bible study and a foundational piece on Sabbath, hospitality, prayer, service, storytelling, and retreat. Now, here's another sort of annoying thing, but what happens when you click on it is you're going to go here and then you download the PDF. So it's easier just to go ahead and download the PDFs if you can, because it's kind of hard to get back and forth. I swear they're going to do a new website soon. That's what I'm told. So you have these foundational pieces, and these foundational pieces have scripture. So you could actually use them to do a Bible study on each one. Then we have our ministry kits. So we have Sabbath Practices Ministry Kit for Children. So it walks through all 5 practices if you're working with children, if you're working with youth. The young adult one, you know, young adult, definition of young adult can vary, but it's good for maybe older high school youth as well as college students, as well as just our, you know, young professionals or younger adults that are in our congregations. Then we have one, you know, just basically for adults. There's some ideas here for older adults as well in this ministry kit. Intergenerational, time together. Households. So this was an important one that we used, especially during the time when we're not gathering in person. There's a lot of great ideas in here for that. And we try to use the term households. A lot of times it means people with children. And a lot of the activities are for people with children, but not all of them, and not necessarily. So we try to not just say families, we say households. And then we have a ministry kit for camp. So if you have a camp and conference center, do y'all go to Camp Wakanda in your area? So that's the Ohio camp that I visited this summer. I love Camp Wakanda. You should go there. I don't know how near you it is, but this will be for your camp leaders, but also for folks, if you're going to do an event at a camp, you can take a look at that. And then we have the Seasons of the Church kit that will go through Lent and Advent, Eastertide. So there's Lent and Eastertide. And it really connects to a lot of the resources that we have in the Presbyterian Mission Agency. We have a recorded Zoom session, and then we have like a sampler that we had put out before we were done with everything. So, and this sampler really focused on Zoom and remote activities. So it still applies if you wanted to take a look at that. Any questions about this page and how to get to it before I stop sharing?
Did you all know that that's even available?
Do now.
And this is exactly why I wanted Stephanie to come, because there's all this great stuff our denomination has that we don't know about. So here you go.
Here we go. I'm going to just show you one other thing real quick. So if you do pcswa.org/scattered-church, this has nothing to do with practices really, but I think it might be a good idea to show you all this. This is another page to show you. This was done by I'm a part of Theology, Formation, and Evangelism. David Gambrell, our Associate for Worship, and our Associate for Theology, sort of walked through what it looks like to have these new modes of ministry. We have some quick sheets here. This is all really about the scattered church. We have a couple of webinars produced by Worship Times about how to sustain digital worship and producing it. And then there was a Zoom conversation with Bruce Reyes-Chow. But if you click on this additional resource page, then we'll continue to add things here. And of course, you can get to the toolkit from here as well. But there's some other things that might interest you. So I just thought I'd throw that out there too. These are the two most recent things we did, was the scattered church and the toolkit. Okay, well, I don't want to keep you too long, but this is a time of question and answer. And feel free to ask anything. I'm not rushing off to anything. So for those of you that will get off in a few minutes, let me just say thank you for having me. I hope that you have some new things to think about. It is our job to work with you. So that is my email. If you would like to call and work through things, our office takes a posture of coaching. And that means that we are available to you to talk through and bring out what is best in your context. We know that context matters and that how you apply some of our resources in your particular area is completely different than how someone else might. So please feel free to reach out if you have some specific things that you'd like to work through. And so feel free to leave the Zoom whenever you'd like, but I will stay on for anybody that would like to answer, have some questions or some further conversation. But thank you for having me.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I did, yes, thank you, Stephanie. I did copy and paste everything in the chat, and so that will probably be posted alongside. So our breakout session was recorded if you want to go back to any of this. We're going to do the same thing on Wednesday again. So I don't know if we're going to put both recordings up. Maybe we'll ask the workshop leader which recording they thought, or which class, maybe had, I don't know, whatever. So not that you're on the best or worst, but I
understand.
That didn't come out right. But one of the recording, so if you wanted to go to clergy self-care and you can't come Wednesday, I mean, you can come back on Wednesday and go to that. But if you have something going on already, all of these workshops will be recorded. You can check them out on the Presbytery site at midnight, Saturday night, if you want to, if you can't sleep. I don't know. So thank you for coming. And yes, I'm sure some people have some questions, so.
I can share the slides with you too, Jenny, if people would like to have those. Feel free to, use them as they are, play with them, whatever. Everything we do in the mission agency is for all of you. So there's no proprietary piece on it. So I will definitely also send you the slides. Somebody was asking for those.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sure what we'll do is we'll create a whole link, click on one link pie and everything will be in a drop down or something for folks.
Great.
Well, I'm just glad to share share the resources because, you know, I think I've said this before. I've worked for the denomination 20 years, and I feel like I know how to navigate the Peace USA website and all of that pretty well. But there was this whole piece I either seen or I didn't really know what it was, or I didn't pay close enough attention. So I was really glad to know about this.
Well, I think during this time, at least our area has worked harder to get things out. So, and up for, and it's a large conversation about how we get all of the church leader resources in one place. So we're working on it.
Yeah, we here just at our presbytery, we do the same thing, struggle with that, getting resources up all the time and removing old stuff and just keeping fresh content.
Yeah. It is a challenge. Thank you for being Matthew 25 churches as well. And do you all know where to find Matthew 25 resources? So again, try that peaceusa.org/Matthew 25. That should get you there. And there are lots of videos and recorded sessions and things like that as well.
Yeah, we had David Gambrell as our PI leader last year.
Yay.
So we're familiar with that name. And we had, oh brother, I'm going to blank out from Vital Church Congregations.
Either Carlton or Catherine.
Catherine McGill, yeah.
Catherine Threadgill.
Threadgill.
Catherine Threadgill is now the Associate Director for Theology, Formation, and Evangelism. So Ray Jones is the Director and Catherine is the Associate Director.
Okay.
And at our Matthew 25 event, we'll be doing all the, looking at all these resources and making sure people know how to get there. And
great.
We'll follow
so
that.
You've found the things, huh? Great.
So, well, thank you again, everyone. And you've got Stephanie's email. And I don't think we're not going to go, we decided not to go back in the large group because like the elder group had 39 people, 29 people, a lot of people. And so we weren't sure if they would go over. And so we wanted the workshops to be able to end on their own. So we don't have a big final hoorah for you, but please feel free to come again on Wednesday. You have to register. It's a different link, and check out one of the other workshops if you would like. That's again, one of the neat things about it's free and it's at different times, and maybe someone in your church family should know about it on Wednesday, and you can share that info.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, thanks, Stephanie.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
But it went great. So thank you for the invitation to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Appreciate that. Any, except for breakout rooms, anything different for Wednesday that would be helpful for you?
I don't think so. I think you handled the breakout rooms great. You went right to it. It was you really, this stuff is hard and you nailed it. Like you had your plan B and you did it. And I thought it was great.
I appreciate that. My husband, who is on here as well, can tell you the angst of trying to get that, or I even practiced. I practiced with staff and they did it. And so anyway, best laid plans. So it's all right.
I thought I downloaded the new version, so I should have been able to see it. I don't know either. So, but yeah, the way you did it was great. You just called the people's names and it went as fast as it could have.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, yes and no. Had I realized it wouldn't work, I could have assigned people while Greg and Alona were talking.
Yeah, that's true.
Which had been the first possibility, but then I was so excited by, everybody picks their own. And that way, if somebody changed their mind, because you know how they do that on Pi, they're like, I signed up for elder, but now I want some, So I thought I had my bases covered, but oh well. Stephanie, how about yours? Did everything work okay?
I think everything's fine. Yep. I was just checking in to make sure there's nothing else you needed from me, and then
no. Do you need anything else for Wednesday, or you're good to go for there?
I'm good to go.
You got, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but Wednesday is a much smaller group. Hi, other folks that are jumping on. We're officially done. I can tell jokes or something, but otherwise I'm just debriefing. I'm debriefing with the leaders. If you loved it, you can come back Wednesday and join us. But otherwise, you don't need to stick around unless you just want to, like I said, hear my lovely voice. We're just debriefing with some of our leadership.
They're good jokes too, by the way. I've heard some.
Oh, good. Oh, thanks, Mike. That's nice of you. Yeah. I'll tell one of my favorites about the two muffins in the oven. No, just kidding. I think I had mentioned Wednesdays at the moment. Wednesdays is much smaller. Although I say much smaller, it now we're up to 40 some. So better than I had thought. I think, Stephanie, you have 7 or 8. Chip, you also about 7 or 8 at the moment. Great. So Great. In some ways, you'll be able to do different things. Thanks to those who just jumped on out of your workshop. We're done. I'm just debriefing with our leaders. So you're welcome to stick around if you want, but we're just talking debriefing. Hope it was a good program for you. So Chip and Stephanie, thank you. If there's nothing else that you want to share, anything to do differently, we can for Wednesday. Otherwise, same song, second verse, a little bit louder, a little bit worse.
Kathy, can I send you, I don't know if you have if Zoom gives you a list of who attended. It
does.
Can I send you my presentation? I noticed they were taking notes, and so they probably would appreciate just having the PowerPoint. If I send it to you, can you circulate it to them?
I'm going to say yes. Here's my thing. I don't know how long I have the list of participants once the event is done. So assuming, I have all their names in the computer. I have all their emails. I think I can get them, but yes. So yes, send it to me and I will do my best to get it. At the very least, we will put all of the resources that we get from everybody on the PSV website, and we will say you can go there to watch any of the workshops, to do anything like that. So Jenny, you taped Stephanie's.
I did, and I also I copied and pasted all the chat stuff, so that can be also added into that.
And awesome. Somebody asked for my PowerPoint, so I just assumed it would be posted, not necessarily emailed out, like you said.
Yeah, and that, I can do both those. Chip, did yours get recorded?
Yes, I remembered about 4 minutes in, so I welcomed everybody to the work in progress.
Well, that's the other thing is I figure we have 2 chances for that. If we didn't get it recorded today, we can get it recorded. We can get it recorded on Wednesday. Well, but if you can send, sorry, I'm just double checking. If you can send me your PowerPoints, and we'll get them downloaded to wherever, Great. We'll have them in a lot of places. If I can get them specifically to the deacon folks, I will. But otherwise, we will let everybody know. At the very least, I can let everybody know, hey, this is where they are. So you can.
Great.
Super.
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chip and Stephanie. Jenny, if you can stick around, that'd be great.
Yep.
Other folks who are on, we're just finishing up. Unless you got something to share, Nancy or Roger, we're glad for you to be on. Yeah, Nancy, you're muted, so unmute.
There it is. I was just looking in my file for the actual recording, and I have 2 separate files. So I guess I will have to look at them to see which one is for the whole thing or not. So
great. All right. Well, that's right. Thank you. Jenny and Nancy had volunteered to tape in the Elder. Since I knew that Peggy had a lot.
Yes, and they want to have her slides also.
Yes. Yeah. So
do what you can.
Yeah. The plan is that we're going to post them all on, on the PSV website. If I can send them to everybody who signed up, I will. But at the very least, it'll be in the weekly PSV, and we'll let everybody know, here's where you can go and click on them to see them, see the videos, and or. Thanks to folks who are jumping on. If you got a question or something, wave, or, oh, hi, Matthias, just waving at me. But otherwise, we're just kind of debriefing with folks as they finish up. So thank you, Nancy. I super appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And you've got my email to send. Yeah, she does. Okay.
So everything went really well. again, even the breakout rooms, I think everybody, felt fine. It'll be interesting to see and hear from other folks. Like, I think Tom Rice probably went to the clergy one. And so
right.
I'll talk to him. I mean, I'm going to go to that on Wednesday anyway, but
yeah,
it'd be kind of neat to hear from other folks because right. We got to do some kind of follow-up with an evaluation.
Yeah, I thought about that. We actually, it looks like clerk is still meeting.
Okay.
Right now. Okay. Other folks have dropped out.
And then,
the whole evaluation thing, I got thinking about that and I thought, well, you can make it so at the end they get a little question or something, but it's one of those, it's hard to know what to ask because we won't do it like this next year.
Right, that's true. But I don't know. I mean, if like we had 17 people that said Peggy was awesome, you got to bring her back.
Yes, you're right. That's true. Yes,
and
that's a good point.
We could create our own kind of like, what is that called? Not Survey Monkey. There's another little something that sometimes comes out after workshops. Probably some freebie.
There's those things. Yeah. And so I do have everybody's email already. Hi folks, we're just debriefing after the meeting. I can tell jokes if you want to stick around, but otherwise you're free to go. Hope it went well. We'll be sending a little evaluation form out. So hopefully it was a worthwhile event for you. So we're just chatting to get ready for Wednesday to do this all over again. So you're right. We ought to hear if, oh my gosh, Stephanie was the best thing since sliced bread and we must have her for the whole event, or that's just always good to know.
So. And so I recorded, so obviously we're gonna have 2 recordings of everything. So I thought the other thing we could do is ask the presenters on Wednesday, which
oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Which one went better, or which one had more conversation that you think the other group would be interested in? Because we don't need 2 of everything. But
yes, that's a really good idea. Let me make a note of that.
And I think the evaluator or the presenters would know which one went better that they would want to have up.
Yeah, because you're right. We don't really want to post both of them.
Yeah, it just seems sort of like not necessary.
So I'm assuming that, oh, there's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to be late.
No worries. No worries. How did it go?
Ours went pretty well. We had, those of you that don't know about my group, I have some groupies and they come every year. And we tried to do it interactively and it worked fairly well given the limitations of Zoom. So
great. Anything you want to change for Wednesday?
No, I think the other day you said.
Oh, I did. No, never mind. You're right. We got nobody for Wednesday. And so we will officially not have clerks for Wednesday. I mean, don't you think? Well, tell you what, I can let you know who it is, I guess, or I don't know. You tell me.
Why don't you let me, if you get a registration, let me know. If you get several, I'm happy to do it. But if if you just get one, it might make more sense for me to interact with them just one-on-one.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Tell them to watch the recording. Did somebody record it?
Right, and that's, yes, exactly. And I think that might be the best. Most people wouldn't. I mean, might feel awkward. Well, it depends on who it is. Whether they would adore an hour with you personally, Jim, or whether that would be make them self-conscious or whatever. But yes, because I get the email, I know who signed up. So if somebody, I'll email them and you and say, you're the only one signed up at the moment. Okay. Jim's glad to meet with you a different time. We can have the workshop as normal, or you can just watch the video from Saturday. But yeah, at the moment, there's nobody. So I'm actually quite pleased that everybody jumped on for you. So you might be, I mean, like I said, it's easy for you to be free on Wednesday, because I would imagine, I think there's a chance we'll pick up, the Faith Toolkit, or even some elders and deacons, if folks go back to their churches and say, hey, did you sign up? You forgot, here's still a chance. I don't think that's going to be true of clerks. I think clerks are likely, if they're going to do it, they will have already signed up. That's just my guess.
That would be typical of the personality profile. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm guessing Janet is a groupie. Is Janet a groupie? She is laughing an awful lot at your jokes, Jim.
Janet is the smartest clerk in the presbytery because she's got Mark Gowan filling out her statistical report for her. So.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. All right. Well, that's where we'll leave it then, Jim. If anybody does sign up for clerk, I'll send you and whoever it is an email, and we'll just go from there. And otherwise, you don't need to be on again. Okay. We really appreciate you doing it. I mean, Jim, we really did. You were first choice, not last. When we were brainstorming, on all the different levels, and we said you were consistently the highest evaluation every year for Pi. And what this presbytery wants,
Yeah, no, it's easy to work from sort of the minute review form that we use. And I think that gives folks some comfort that what they're doing will, because, the biggest thing clerks don't want is an exception to their minute review.
Right. And I can imagine, even though there's obviously very strong similarities, somebody from another presbytery who says, well, I'm not sure if yours does this or not. Well, we don't need to waste time on that. So clerk seems so presbytery specific, at least to me, that we really appreciate you doing this, yet again, and in this kind of crazy format. Can we send
you a pizza pie?
What's that?
Can we send you a pizza pie as a thank you, or a pumpkin pie?
Oh, my daughter's still home from college. We're going to make a lemon meringue pie. So.
Ooh, nice. Nice. All right. Well, great. Well, I think that's good. I think we talked to Chip and to Stephanie already. I'm thinking maybe Anne and Peggy went ahead and jumped off. So I'll be emailing them and seeing what else they need to know, or what we need to know from them.
Putting this together, and
I think it went pretty well.
Again.
Yeah. I'm overall pleased that I am pleased it was able to happen. I wish we hadn't lost the time assigning the rooms, but c'est la vie. Es lo que es. However many languages I can say that in that don't include profanity, I will. Okay, great.
Anything from me?
I don't think so, Jenny. I think we're same song, second verse. I will figure out how to play the video of Greg and Alona during that time.
Because it's still recording now, so it'll be a big recording, and I think you can just cue it up to where you want it to start when you screen share.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, if you need me, call me Monday, and we can go with something else.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks again, Jim. Thanks, Jenny, and thank you, Janet, for joining our Pi event.